I'm here to talk to you about something that's very top of mind these days, and that is a crisis in public consultation. I would argue that there's also a crisis in democracy, and it's abundantly clear that there's a crisis in confidence in the responsiveness of government policymakers to the citizens they represent. A core principle of democracy is the principle that the will of the people should be the legitimating basis for government decisions. However, there's widespread perception that governments do not serve the common good of the people, but rather serve organized special interests that have the means to exert disproportionate leverage over government decision-making. And the problem's getting much worse. Just watch the news. In a recent poll, 8 out of 10 Americans said, "This country is pretty much run by a few big interests looking out for themselves, which is a far cry from the benefit of all of the people." Other democracies, feel free to laugh, reflect similar views, including our own here in Canada, with the effective demise of parliamentary democracy and the installation of court government and centralized power. In fact, power in Canada is more heavily invested in the executive than the US or Britain. People are also frustrated with the level of partisanship in decision-making. 65% in a recent poll chose the position, "The parties fight for their own narrow interests, and the will of the people is ignored, and the results do not serve the people." This too has contributed to the severely low levels of confidence in governmental decision-making and public policy development. Government is one of the least trusted institutions, and elected officials are held in very low regard, as opposed to movie stars and rock stars. We used to seek the best and the brightest to lead us, but now the minute you get involved in politics, you're immediately suspect. Well, this wasn't the case when I was growing up. That's me in the circle there. In the late 60s and 70s, we actually believed that we could make a difference, and we did. We could fight City Hall. In those days, it was all about power to the people, overcoming the establishment, and charting a course for civil society and a better life for future generations. We now consider this quaint and naive. In short, we've lost confidence. As evidence, the decline in voting since the 1960s has been profound. These numbers are a little out of date through Elections Canada, but the trend has continued. We believe that decisions are foregone conclusions, coming back to the trust issue from earlier, and that we're collectively powerless to affect any kind of change. This is at the core of the prevailing climate of anger and disillusionment. So what do we need to do to address this crisis? Well, it appears that citizens in democracies believe that the antidote to the disproportionate influence of special interests is to give citizens a clear voice by having policymakers actively consult the people. Democracy, whatever its flaws, is still the best form of government. People do not exist to serve government. It's the other way around. Government exists to serve the people. And it's easy to lose sight of this. Still, promoting active consultation and, as a corollary, increased direct democracy presents real structural challenges to the existing representative system of democracy, and that system is broken. Now, if the system of representation was working well, then elected officials would have a pretty good understanding of the attitudes of their constituents, and we wouldn't have a crisis. The reality is they do not. Our governance system supports the status quo of incumbent politicians and entrenched bureaucrats who might well lose their power through the increased scrutiny of public consultation. And this is precisely why advancing public consultation is mission critical to our future. After all, politics as we understand it is a forum and therefore crucially involves the persuasion of peers. It's not about the coercion of peers or the slipping one by peers. It's about transparent and open government. And these days, that includes open data. So if the desired outcome is increased public engagement, then government needs to make a greater effort to consult the citizenship. Lucky for us, the internet revolution enables such democratic activities in ways not possible since Aristotle, when it was possible to manage one man, one vote in person. Well, it's not all doom and gloom. To their credit, many elected officials do spend substantial time trying to understand the views of their constituents. They read letters, attend public meetings, and take a stab at social media. Given this, why do they have such poor understanding of their constituents' views? Well, there's several reasons. Sometimes elected officials view their election as an endorsement of their policy positions, which is not necessarily accurate. In most cases, voters are presented a simple choice between candidates. At best, they often vote for the lesser of evils, and clearly do not feel that their vote should be interpreted as obviating the need for continued dialogue. Another factor that undermines our leaders' understanding of their constituencies is that people they encounter are not necessarily a representative sample. Citizens who write City Hall or attend public meetings are often more ideological than average or have specific interest in specific legislation. And there are the usual suspects who show up at every public meeting to hear themselves talk. Furthermore, and more dangerously, there is the fact that individuals who make campaign donations tend to gain greater access and attention and may also have interests that are clearly not representative. So, why is public consultation a good idea? Well, first and foremost, it responds to people's demand for greater democratic responsiveness, and it can help restore confidence in government. Secondly, public consultation can improve policymakers' understanding of the views of their constituents. Thirdly, public consultation is likely to be a force for greater consensus, and public consultation is a way to draw on the collective intelligence and wisdom of crowds. And finally, public consultation, by giving the public a greater voice, is likely to be a force to promote the emergence of new constructive developments. And we heard earlier about our views on climate change, and I would include that in that category. So how do we do this? Technology now exists to overcome some of the most salient pathologies of democratic governance. The internet provides a distinctive structure of opportunities that has the potential to reinvigorate interest in civic engagement. Ultimately, e-voting will increase participation rates in democracy, and the use of online tools can extend active engagement well beyond the traditional bounds of public hearings. Engaging the public in a wired world is a bit of a moving target. This is not just because of the rapid development of new tools or apps for engagement. The main challenges are understanding the complexity of how people organize themselves online, and citizens' evolving expectations of government in an environment of dramatically increased social media activity, where the worldwide community of Facebook now exceeds the population of the United States. In this changed environment, users are organizing themselves into networks and communities defined by shared interests, relationships, and geography. As a result, governments at all levels are now legislating consultation and need accurate tools to validate their decision-making. Verifiable sources of both qualitative and quantitative information are required to inform public policy development. So we have had some online consultation thus far, but it's met with varying degrees of success. Because although there's been plenty of opportunities for public commentary, these have been of limited value, because existing platforms have been inadequate, because consultation has been largely anonymous and does not stand up to scrutiny. So whereas you may get lots of comments on the Talk Green to Us campaign, we really don't know from whom or from where those people are coming. So my solution to this has been the creation of PlaceSpeak. The problem that I was trying to deal with in the creation of PlaceSpeak was how to authenticate community consultation. And whenever you're dealing with consultation on a hyper-local level in your neighborhood, you'll end up people coming out to public meetings, but we really don't know online how that affects decision making. So PlaceSpeak has been designed to do something that no other engagement platform has done, and that is to connect people to place so that they can authentically consult with decision makers. The flip side is that makers of public policy can be assured that they're reaching the right people in the right places. And this is absolutely vital. For without the ability to connect people to place, any responses are at best anecdotal and not salient. While it's possible to obtain copious amounts of comments, as I've said before, the absence of the ability to verify the identity of the respondent renders the data as virtually useless. Now, where am I? So how does it work? I'm going to try and get into the how does it work part. There we go, how it works. Bing. And if I can make that, oh well, it's close enough. So first of all, people register, and they can get in easily with social media like Facebook or Twitter. They add their address, and the system first authenticates them using their IP address and parcel identifier numbers and automatic aspects. And then we ask people to go through a variety of levels of authentication with email, home phone, cell phone, mailers, and in doing so, building up the confidence level of the data that we're collecting. So ultimately, we're contemplating up to 5 layers of authentication. Once you're in, your profile is only visible to you, the participant, and to anyone else, you're just a green dot on a map. Okay, so once you're in the system, you're able to see consultation topics in your area. And then on the other side, the proponents, oh, there we go. Proponents are able to create those consultation topics. And as they do that, they map the area or areas out geographically that they want to hear from. And then they choose their features. What is consultation? It's outgoing messaging, it's discussion forums, it's polls and surveys. You want to be able to both get out your messaging and then receive input back on the other side. You want to make people aware of public hearings because we're not saying don't do what you already do. In any event, by getting people into the system, you're more able to allow them to interact with activities, and then you can be notified of anything new that's coming up in your neighborhood, so you're able to connect with that. Each individual consultation then provides the reports that the proponents need, whether they're in school boards or making rezoning or development permit applications or emergency services, anything that might be tied to a specific locale. What does that do for me in the end? Armed with the verified information of where they live, it's possible to take public participation to a whole new level. The applications are legion. I started out looking at rezoning and development permit applications and quickly discovered that schools have catchment areas, community centers do, fire halls. Anytime a proponent of a topic wants to hear from people likely to be impacted, PlaceSpeak gives them the opportunity to enable genuine, authenticated consultation. And the implications are enormous. If it's possible to consult authentically, then it's possible to vote. And online voting has been fraught with fraud and manipulation thus far, but now with being able to have multiple layers of authentication, online voting can become a reality. So yes, there may be a crisis in public consultation, but utilizing the opportunities implicit in internet technology and social media, we now have the tools to respond to this crisis constructively. It does come down to confidence in our democratic system of government. And thank you for your time, and power to the people.